Finding the button, clicking it.
Welcome to the KCP community call. I called this the summer edition because Germany has finally reached summer temperatures, which is unfortunate for us because at least in Germany there is no AC. So we're all a little, or like a sizable portion of this meeting is probably a little dying over there. So with that being said, this is the KCP community call of August, of the mid of August, and this meeting is, as always, governed by the CNCF Code of Conduct, which boils down to let's be excellent to each other. So the very first item.
All these two jobs which to be deployed tonight.
Sorry, there's microphone that's muted.
Basically, a test of scheduling their executing.
Okay. All right. So my first item on the agenda is to remind everyone who is attending to add themselves to the attendee list. To edit this document, you need to be on the KCP Dev Google Group email list. So feel free to add yourself. Okay. Next item on the agenda is, are there any new meeting attendees, any new faces here who want to say hi and introduce themselves?
Yeah, I can start actually. I just joined and I'm actually working with Deloitte actually, but working on a project in JPMC with Cody. I think he introduced himself last week. And we're working on this project for building out KCP, right? And interested in learning more about it and connect with the community as well. So I've done plenty of work with Kubernetes as well as other security areas and met many wonderful folks. Always good to connect with more and build the network.
All right, we're very glad to have you. Welcome. But anyone else who wants to say hi?
Hi, my name is Vishal, and I am one of the engineers who's working around like Kubernetes and cloud native technologies around it. So yeah, mostly contributing to open source project, and yeah, happy to join like KCP community and see if I can contribute there and be part of the beautiful journey. So.
All right, welcome. We're glad to have you here. Okay, anyone else who wants to say hi? All right, you do not have to be shy, but I have to say I'm very glad to see so many people here. We have an influx of people that's new, and that is very great. So welcome everyone. So with that, let's get to our agenda. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. All right. I'm going to shuffle topics around just slightly. I would just want to start with one thing here, because this is like interesting and important for users and developers both. So sorry, Simon, you'll be next. But basically, we just be aware that we might, or that we will have a 0.28.1 release rather soon. We've discovered some issues with the new API versions that we've introduced for API bindings and API exports. There's some rough edges around that, a couple of bugs, couple of regressions. We will probably, in the next 1 or 2 weeks, we'll have a patch release. So if you don't have immediate need to upgrade and you want to like wait these bugs out, like feel free to. We'll send out notifications about the releases as we always do. And like that's kind of, I guess, the user part. The developer part is if you are aware of any bugs that are unfixed, please, don't have a GitHub issue yet, please raise one and like maybe tag me or one of the other maintainers with the note that this should be included in the 0.28.1 release. So that we don't forget anything important before we cut the release. So couple of things are just have issues, don't have pull requests yet, so it's going to take a while. If you find something, just reach out. Okay. Before I move on, this was kind of a PSA. Any notes on the upcoming patch release? All right, then just let's move on immediately because I promised that Simon will be next. So Simon, you have a topic that you added to the agenda. Take us away.
Yeah, hi everyone. This was something I noticed recently while writing some end-to-end tests. So to give some context on this, most of our end-to-end tests majorly use require from I think it's called Testify. So we're majorly using Testify package. However, I think we might have a misconception of how require works, and this might be a reason for some of the flakes that we have in our testing. More precisely, there is a function called eventually inside require, which we have written a little wrapper around called KCP testing helpers eventually. I will go into more details what our work does, but for firstly understanding the issue, I think it's not required. And the thing is then that you cannot combine require eventually with assert. And I've picked an example. So Marvin, if you could open the first link, we have this everywhere. I'm not picking any favorites or any background, but this is example here. So we have an eventually function. You can see in the first line. And then in the last line, there's an assert contains. And inside this contains, we pass in the T, which is the test itself. And the way that these assertions work is if they fail, they will write the failure into T, or more specifically, they will let T fail. And this is independent of the eventually block. And essentially, code that we see here in the example leads to a situation where if the test passes on the first try, so on the first tick, everything's going to be fine. Test is going to be running. But if for some reason it doesn't, it will actually just fail the whole test. And I've also included a link for how this looks like in Power. It's just the test fails. So the second example, that's exactly something like this. Like it says, connect never thing, but I thought I had some example code here, but I can put it. You can also test this pretty easily. Maybe I'm not sure where I have it, but I can pass this in. So this is essentially the root of the issue. Why, to be honest, Testify package does it this way, I cannot tell you for sure. One thing I can say is that there is an eventually with T function. So if we go back to the document, there is another link in there. And this function essentially takes in, and this looks a bit complex, but it modifies the eventually function to not be a bool func anymore, but to be a func that takes in a collect T, which is essentially a special custom type that you can pass in as a testing T. So to an assert, you can pass the C, the collect T, you can pass into assert.contains, assert.require, and so on. And then what it does is it collects them in there, sees are there any failed assertions, and if so, fail the block. At least this is my understanding of this topic. Yeah, and that's the way I assume they meant using assertions together with a custom collector. Therefore, I did have a look if we couldn't just create a KCP testing helpers eventually with T, so the equivalent to it. Therefore, people to know, our KCP testing helpers dot eventually at the moment essentially calls require dot eventually, but it does have a little bit of wrapper around it that after a fifth of the time, it will print out the message if it is still failing. And so I was looking if this was something I could do as well and write an eventually with T. But the problem is, while with eventually you can just call the func and then just check for true false, there is no way for you to access the errors collected inside the collect T. It's a private field at the moment. So I could not figure out any way to create an equivalent KCP testing helpers eventually with T wrapper. Well, with all of this out of the way, I think it's best we'll do questions first, and then we'll talk about it. Yes, Christoph, go ahead.
I have at least two questions. The example that you linked here with the reference test and the live example. The live example that failed is not the test you linked.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, yes. Yeah, these
Okay.
these are mismatching. It was just, yes, I remember I wanted to update this, but the other one looks like this. It's also an assert something,
Whoa.
unless I'm mistaken.
No, the other one uses strings contains. I think. Yeah. Well, so that was a bit confusing. I was wondering what's the difference between the assert and the require package, because most things I've seen use require dot something something. This is assert dot something.
Yeah, I've looked this up. I think assert. If I let me just before I say something wrong,
Yeah.
can also
You
answer.
probably know.
Require fails the test if the check fails. Assert just fails the test but doesn't exit it. So if you make assert 1 equals true, then it just logs 1 equals true, but that it is failed, but it continues.
Okay, so one does error, one does fail.
Yeah. So you can, for example, use require to check that a function did not error, and then you can check the result value of a function, and then you can continue and do other checks without actually erroring. It's handy. Huh?
If that is the case, I guess we have to be mindful of which ones are actually wrong, because I think then this here is fine, right?
This is also why I'm now confused.
I think that
Well,
would still that specifically would still result in a test failure, because if the assert contains fails, it will mark the test as failed, but it will continue.
With other tests, but still.
Yeah, so it will still eventually, until that is true, but it will still mark it as false. This thing is, I would expect many more tests to fail then. But on the other hand, when I was implementing the Go leak, the workspace leak tests, I ran into exactly that, and then had to switch to eventually with T. And I think I even put it in the comment message that I was confused when it was working, why I had to use eventually with T there, which doesn't make it flake safe. Just to say that, but yeah.
But is assert contains correct here logically?
Logically.
We are calling this function within eventually many times until it succeeds.
No.
But every time it doesn't succeed, we don't want to mark T as failed.
Yeah, I mean, that's one's point, right?
So is assert contains here even the correct function?
No, that would be wrong. We would have to either use eventually with T and then use the collect T to mark it as failed, or we would just have to use like compare contains or strings contains or whatever.
It's something that returns true false.
So eventually with T, we'll just run a subtest for every iteration, basically.
Yeah, just like if not it essentially does a bubble, and as soon as something inside that bubble fails, it says, okay, this is failed, but it continues until the timeout. Basically, like eventually, just that you can use assert and require functions.
Yeah, like it doesn't create subtests. It has like its own result collector, but that result collector is independent of T, and as such, it doesn't fail T.
And I think you can't use the assert and contains functions because they work with the testing T, and the collect T is not doesn't satisfy the interface of testing T, I think. I think something like that was that it was so confused why this even exists.
Sorry, can you repeat the sentence?
So when you use eventually with T, you don't get a testing.t compliant struct. You get the collect T, which is an explicit struct. It's not even an interface, it's an explicit struct. So you cannot use this, and this doesn't satisfy the interface of collect T, so you cannot use assert.contains or require.contains, but you have to use the functions or the methods on the collect T. You can't even just say, okay, we are just replacing everything, and then the assert and require functions keep working. We would have to rewrite the tests as well. Maybe let me share the leak test, because
or like I've also just posted a link, maybe, but it's the same thing. Like this is what I've done for deletion relationship test. I can pick whatever. Yeah, but yes.
Sorry. You can use the require.no error. Okay.
Yeah, you can use everything, because basically you just pass in C. Like you never interact with T. The T is only used if eventually marks itself as failed, which makes sense, because if your eventually clause does not get hit, you would want your test to fail. Right? It reaches the timeout, you want the test to fail.
Or maybe I just went wrong, then you can use the require and assert functions. Okay. Then I was wrong, sorry.
So a collect C, an assert collect T from line 95 can be used as a T that require.contains, require.no error, require.
Okay.
Thanks. So then this is, I, to be honest, have no idea what the like why the other one exists, why require.eventually exists. To be honest, within the package, this is something I would still have to figure out, but yeah, you can pass in the C.
I mean, this seems like a very personal preference. If you want to return a bool, or if you want to write test require and assertions within the loop, I would say we probably want to have a, let's say, blanket ban on using require and assert within the KCP testing helper eventually. This is the kind of stuff where I would see actually I'm not sure if any of you know about Zemgrep, the tool where you can write down some rules and it scans your code basically for that. Like a require on assert call within the KCP testing helper would here's one of these, right? If you used here an assert contains, it would always be a mistake, right? It would be a coding mistake. So I wonder if I'm not sure how many instances of this we have. But I've also always looked for a reason to bring Zemgrep into a CI/CD pipeline and have some rules that help us keep the code base consistent. But I think the gist is that we agree here, right? If you don't use assert and require in eventually calls, use them in eventually with T. That's kind of.
Can you repeat that?
So don't use assert or require when you use eventually. Use them only if you do eventually with T.
Yeah. And I would, my gut feeling says this form of like this weird little subtests is kind of weird. I would prefer the just Boolean way. I see that the require package offers some nice syntactic sugar for doing some assertions. You know, yeah, I get it, but it kind of feels weird to have a wait loop that is also kind of its own little test, but not really. But I can see either way as long as, yeah. I have never seen anything really flake because of this, by the way. That is the surprising part to me, that this is supposedly making everything super flaky, but all I see is like 3 flaky tests and they all were sharding related. So that's surprising.
Okay. In the interest of us being pretty clear what's the issue here and that we shouldn't be doing it, is anyone interested in reviewing the code base and fixing these?
Me. I want to fix it.
Okay.
I mean, one thing just to point out too, I think one thing I could also be doing in general is I could open up like an issue/question edit testify if they are interested in creating, for example, an accessor on collect T so you could access the errors. And I think this is something, at least from my point of view, could be a reasonable request to at least ask them. Like, because they, like, nothing would change for them. It's a completely compatible thing. It's you just create a method on collect T errors that then returns to you the field.
What do you need them for?
Then you could write essentially the wrapper that we have. Like you could have create a KCP testing helper eventually with T, and you get this functionality that Stefan wrote that after 20% of the test time, it prints out, I'm still failing at blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
Yeah, sure. I mean, you want to handle this however you want. I think the main thing is that we try to keep that we try to move the code base into a more consistent state, whichever that is.
I was also confused because the example test that you link here as the live test is the one that I just fixed in KCP, and it was definitely not related in any way to require anything or eventually. So,
The question is, of course, how often does it flake?
All right, I'm going to cut this discussion short. If you want to further look into test flakes, let's take this offline. Yeah, okay. All right. We have a couple more things on the agenda, and I would like to talk about post-rebase work. So first of all, thank you, Nilo, for getting the Kubernetes 1.33 rebase done and dusted. The list of people that we owe a t-shirt to is growing longer and longer. So who knows if we can deliver this maybe on the next KubeCon or something like that. There might be a conversion bug in the rebase, but we're not quite fully sure yet. So I'll give some signal about that, and we'll see. But overall, it looks good. So this is pretty great. Why I want to talk about this is that the next stop from our roadmap is the monorepo. So I think this is a question, I guess, for Robert and Marco. Can we like start to slowly kick these things off? Is there anything missing?
No, I think we can start. We have been waiting for 133 rebase. Now that's done. I don't see any blocker.
All good from my side also.
Okay, awesome. That is pretty great. That means, as a heads up, we should not be trying to change repositories like ClientGo or API Machinery or any of the other ones that we are planning to move into the monorepo. If we have to make these changes because we have like a bug or something, like don't hesitate to like, let's put that way. Let's do these things in a coordinated way so that Marco and Robert are aware of the changes. And if we have to incorporate them, like we don't lose them basically in the transition, because that, would not be nice.
Yeah, I'm planning to finish with my task this week and then more repos the next week that I pick up and we can start next week.
All right. Good. And just a note for everyone, if you're running KCP in some form of fashion, in some way, 1.33, like the latest commit on main, feel free to drop them into your CI pipelines or something. It would be just good to know if like 1.33 is like running well in a longer setting essentially. I also would like to deploy a lab version of that, basically put some monitoring on it and basically see how that is going. But yeah, just for future reference, if you are on this call and a KCP user, or if you're watching this video as a KCP user, would be really nice to get some feedback here.
Can we make this easier by dropping an alpha? How many people, like, it would be nice if you have ready-made container images and stuff.
Container images are there.
Oh.
Rebuilt for every commit.
Okay.
The only thing that you basically need to do is replace the tag in the Helm chart, I would say. And you should be good to go.
Definitely. Okay.
All right. And then we have another topic on the agenda. Christoph, you are looking for some
Jumping
feedback
over yours? Okay.
this year.
So we're jumping over yours. Fine. Okay, good.
No. We talked about the KCP 0.28.1 release already.
Oh. Wow. Time to the box. Okay, I was investigating another test. This is another flaky test. I've debugged it down and I found that this happens when what did I write down? The service account that is being used to authenticate is on another shard as the logical cluster that you try to authenticate against. And the authenticator and the authorizer on the shard that you target can't access the service account on the other shard. And this happens because the build generic config from the control plane from Kubernetes always uses the loopback client to hand into the service account getter. So the service account getter has no option of seeing any service account that's not local to the shard. And I'm not sure if we want to change this in the control plane to somehow use, I don't know, caching server or whatever, or if this should be done by the front proxy, these cases, because the front proxy always knows everything about every shard and can do, if I remember correctly, service account authentication. So is the test wrong and should have used the front proxy? Or should we fix the shards and make them resolve this globally? Nilo.
MJ opened a ticket not that long ago to enable cross-shard service account authentication. So I haven't read it now, but I distinctly remember that. I also remember that there was a PR that was recently closed, but I think that's something else.
No, you're right. There was a PR that was adding a test case, I think, for this specific thing. But it never got merged because we don't have the feature.
Yeah, so I would say we can re-enable that test when we have the cross-shard service account authentication.
Just link the tickets together so the next person can find them. Yep. Okay, then there's no discussion to be made here. I guess. Then I guess we can mark this test as skipped for now, unless we want a flaking test. I don't know. I've seen both in KCP.
I think the one question to look at is, let me bring up your issue again. Another workspace in the same org. I mean, either we mark this as skipped or we make sure that this gets scheduled onto the same shard, because this doesn't look to me like it's supposed to test cross shards.
Would also be an option, Milo?
I would maybe make the test so that it works on one shard for a start, and then after we have the cross shard lookup to then duplicate the test so that it does both ways, cross shard and within a single shard. Then we are done. Well,
Easy peasy. I can do that.
Mhm.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think this should be temporary. But like once we have the feature, okay, and then we shouldn't care. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay. Let's have to bring up the agenda. All right. That actually brings us to the end of the topics that we've added to the agenda. But as always, we have like any other business, open floor, whatever kind of section. So does anyone have any questions or any topics that they didn't much prepare, but they would still like to talk about, something that came up while you were in this meeting, essentially?
I'm sorry I'm late today, but yeah, from next time onwards, I'll try to keep up on time.
Oh, good, no worries. We are, let me put it that way, we are aware that this meeting's schedule timing is a bit difficult. If you try to run a global meeting that everyone can attend, it's, yeah, not ideal. Let's put it that way. I had been toying with the idea of having like different calls for different regions, but I think we're not there yet when it comes to like size of the community. But maybe that's something that we should reconsider in the near future. Like basically an APEC call and then like Europe / America call, something like that.
Okay.
All right. Do we have anything else to talk about? Okay, doesn't seem to be the case. Last chance.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Wesley, and nice to meet you all. So I've been working on this KCP project for a while now, and it's pretty interesting. The workspaces, the isolation workspaces it provides, and the security and everything. So so I did check with few. So in the Slack, I met with somebody, and I don't know his name, but yeah. So I have few questions to shoot out really quick. So so what would be the recommended, the approach for syncing the KCP workspaces, with the external Kubernetes clusters, which should be in a hybrid setup, and which should be also be able to extend to support the dynamic workspaces provisioning, like based on the user roles or the organization hierarchy.
So I think you're looking for, let me share this tool here.
Yeah.
So like one way for you to connect like let's say physical Kubernetes clusters to KCP would be to write like your own controllers, but you also use this component that's part of the KCP project called API Sync Agent that allows you to take a resource from a Kubernetes cluster. So for example, something that's based on a CID, and push that into KCP. So I think this might be the thing that you're looking for.
KCP. Okay. Is there a link? Okay, the sync target. Okay.
It's the KCP API Sync Agent here. Wait.
Got it. Yep. Right. And one last thing. So just for the reference, I mean, is there any diagram or repo, that shows the production grade KCP deployment with multi-tenant routing?
What do you mean with multi-tenant routing?
For the workspaces or
I mean, we have a provider workspace and the consumer workspaces, and when we do that, is there any specific way that where we can actually deviate? I mean, connect from different workspaces within that same thing, like where we create a workspace for the KCP for the tenant or the workload, or that represents the physical Kubernetes cluster to attach to the KCP, and then the syncer comes in place. So is there something syncing the KCP workspaces? Maybe I think I'll just have a better idea maybe if I go through the KCP sync agent that you have shared. So yeah, I'll just go around with that. So I just need any architecture diagram. I mean, the production grade diagram with the routing distributions available. I mean, in any case, I mean, if that's a diagram or a GitHub repo, if that, just to see if that helps my thing in here while working with the KCP.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for the recommended way to install KCP, right now we have this KCP chart here. That's basically the recommended way. Like it runs the different components and standalone pods and lets them scale individually. So the Helm chart is, I think, your best bet at the moment, at least, as it basically encodes all the operational knowledge that we as maintainers have. I'm not sure. Is anyone aware of like a production grade architecture diagram in the docs?
Not in the docs there, but what I like to point towards when getting to know KCP is the presentation you did for the 2025 KubeCon, because I think that has everything you should need to understand how to operate and how to use KCP. I'm trying to find the link because I sent it to someone recently.
So just for reference, like I think these are all our talks. Which one do you mean? You know?
The KubeCon 2025 in London.
The workshop, right?
Yeah, the workshop, yeah.
Yes.
Because that has everything, and you have scripts that you can just run to get to a specific point to follow along. So I think it's under learning.
Yes, learning, and then
in 20, that one there. Last. Yeah, exactly. And that also shows you a working example of how to deploy a database as a service with Postgres as an example. And it gives you basically everything you need to just fiddle around and to test your own setup, to have just an example to work with. And it all works with Kine clusters, so you can just fiddle around with it.
Perfect. Yeah, this I think they should serve my purpose. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, so we do work with the Helm charts using that. So I think I have a better idea. So yeah, thank you for sharing the links. I really appreciate.
On that note, sorry.
Yeah, so that should be from my end. Thank you, guys.
On that note, I'm not sure how compatible the sync agent is already with sharded setups. I think I remember it uses the first virtual workspace URL it finds, and the refactoring for multi-cluster controller runtime has not landed yet. So if you have a really sharded KCP, there might be some issues with the sync agent. I'm not sure, just beware there might be dragons.
Got it. Yep. Thank you.
And for managing what I know of one KCP instance specifically where they just have their own operator, which is just a really, really thin modification of what you get when you run Kube Builder and generate an operator, and they just have a Kube cluster, and they have one specific namespace, and in that namespace they put in when they their own version of the workspace. And with that, this operator watches this namespace, takes these objects, and when it sees a new one, it goes to KCP and creates a new workspace and deploys the API sync agent and everything else that's needed to for their setup to function. And that's what I would then suggest to you as well, that you write just a little operator or something like it to manage this.
Right. Got it. Yep.
All right, great. And didn't say this in the beginning. I'm very glad to have you here, part of the community. We are all very happy to help. So if you have more questions, like, do not hesitate to reach out to us on the KCP users channel.
Perfect. Thank you. So the kubectl KCP has been deprecated, so we are using the kubectl create workspace to create the workspaces and navigate through the workspaces. And also, so I come up with some other thing, like to actually install the kubectl plugin, and then it also works sometimes on the kubectl to navigate through the workspaces, but then it also recommends that we create a config for each workspace and then use a kubectl config where we set the cluster and then set the context, and that should be added under the root. The context that we add under the root when we use the kubectl get context, there we see all the context that should be available for each workspace. I was doing like setting the context and the cluster and then adding it to the context, and then I was able to navigate to the workspaces. So is there any other way that we do it, or just we just have to add each workspace to the context, set a cluster, and then navigate through that, or something like that? Or I mean, I don't know if I'm making sense, but I just wanted to ask you guys.
Does someone want to answer that?
Maybe I can. I hit this similar problem as that as well, that I create a workspace with enter, and that then automatically sets the workspace, the context to the current workspace and modifies the previous workspace, and then I have to go and create the context, and then I have to manually switch back to the workspace I was previously in. It's not that nice, and I would like an option in create workspace to just say, hey, create a workspace, create a context for this workspace without me requiring to go into it, and without modifying my previous or current workspace. The same way I would also like for the create context subcommand to have a option to say which workspace it should create a context for. Yeah, there's definitely some improvements there to be made. What I can share is my hack solution around this, which does a little script to create a workspace on the context with the name of the workspace path. It's not nice. But it works.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so even after creating the workspaces using the context and the clusters, and once it is ready in the get context, I was able to switch to the workspaces, create the provider workspace and things like that. So not going beyond that. So once the KCP has been stopped and restarted again, so I lose the context and I had to redo it again. So that has actually the pain really comes there. So I had to do it every time. So if I have like 5 workspaces, I have to create for each one, cluster context, and get it onto this, and then route it to the different things. But once the KCP restarts again, so all this flow what has been created, that just goes, I mean, doesn't appear in the get context again.
Yeah, because the batteries included option sets that it should generate and write the admin config, and that force rewrites the file in .kcp or wherever the KCP data there is, and then admin kubeconfig. So your best bet would be to make your own account as soon as your KCP instance is set up, and then build a new or copy it away or something. Although I think if you restart with the batteries included option, it also regenerates the token. So better make your own account.
No.
So your own service account, or use OIDC. That would be even better.
Yeah, I understand. But on a production based, I don't think that should be the approved way of approaching this kind of context. Okay, I'm not really sure, but I'll go with you and see if I can achieve that. What you're saying.
Yep. Maybe to add some context. This should only happen if you run KCP locally, and that's like explicitly the developer mode. Like running KCP on your local machine is not like the production way of running KCP. And that's why it does things like writing new tokens, like it gives you a new admin kubeconfig, refreshes, that kind of stuff. You definitely don't have that issue when you run with Helm, because with Helm you would like go with a certificate-based approach and you would generate the kubeconfig yourself, and KCP would not be able to touch it. So this is only because, yeah, this is like a way to rapidly iterate. And if you want to do this kind of thing, I would recommend to just have like a little script handy that does like the initial bootstrapping or the initial setup.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Nilo. Thank you, Marvin. And thank you, everyone, for the inputs.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. Do we have any other topics? All right. Then with that, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Have a nice afternoon, evening, I guess, night, wherever you are. So have a good one and hope to see you here again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Cheerio.